never imagined that just overhearing a phone call could shatter everything I believed in. It started with a little laughter, soft and far away, like distant thunder. Then I heard his voice. My son's voice. It echoed in my ears, sharp and clear, even though he didn't know I was listening. They thought the call had ended, but it was still connected. And I heard every word. She's too stupid to even realize what's going on. I sat frozen at my kitchen table. For a moment, the whole room changed. The air felt heavy and strange, like I was suddenly sitting in someone else's house. The gentle clink of the spoon I just used to stir my tea seemed out of place now. The floral curtains I loved, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall, they all felt wrong. I stared at the phone, still hearing Greg's voice. He laughed, and then his wife Jenna joined in. Seriously, Jenna said, she practically handed it all to us. She thinks she's helping. Greg laughed again, colder this time. What an idiot. As long as she keeps signing everything we need, who cares what she thinks? My hands started to shake, but I kept my breathing calm. I couldn't let the anger take over, not yet. This was my son. My only child. The boy I raised alone after his dad died too young. The one I trusted completely. Just earlier that day, they had asked me to stay on the line to check something. With the lender. I didn't hesitate. I was happy to help. I had just finished wiring the final payment for their house. All the money from my husband's life insurance, my careful savings over the years, it all went into that home. For them. For their future. For my grandson. I had felt proud. So proud. I was doing something good for my family. Then everything changed. I accidentally knocked over my teacup. The soft scrape of it against the counter made me jump. Chamomile tea dripped slowly off the edge of the table and onto the rug I had stitched by hand years ago. I watched the tea soak in, and for a moment, I didn't move. My heart beat slowly, like my body was waiting for my mind to catch up with what had just happened. Greg had always been my rock after his dad died. He promised I'd never be alone. He called every weekend. He brought me groceries when my arthritis acted up. He said, "We're a team now, Mom, me, you, and Jenna. Family sticks together." And I believed him. I needed to believe him. I held on to that like a child holding a favorite old blanket. But now I saw the truth. They didn't love me for who I was. They didn't even appreciate what I'd done. They used my trust to get what they wanted. Not out of love. Not out of gratitude. Just control. Something changed in me in that moment. I didn't cry, not yet. I wouldn't give them that. Instead, I felt something sharp settle deep inside me. Cold and clear. I quietly ended the call. No yelling, no drama. Just silence. Behind me, the kettle was still screaming on the stove. I turned it off slowly and set my cup back upright, like nothing had happened. The house was quiet again. I could still smell the faint scent of lavender from the candle Jenna gave me last Christmas. I looked at it for a long time. This was my home. My money. My life. And I had handed it over to people who didn't deserve it. I placed my hands on the kitchen counter and whispered, steady and firm, "Not anymore." That morning, before I heard their cruel words, I had felt nothing but joy. I stood at the bank, smiling, as the teller handed me the final receipt. The house was officially theirs. No more mortgage. No more debt. I felt like I was giving them something special, my legacy. On the drive back, I imagined Greg's smile when I showed him the papers. I thought maybe Jenna would hug me, even tear up. I pictured my little grandson running around their living room, safe and happy in a house I helped make secure. They had convinced me this was for him. "It's not just about us, Mom," Greg said. "It's for the baby. This house will be his one day." And Jenna, always so sweet on the outside, had nodded and smiled, making me believe it too. But now, sitting there in that quiet kitchen, I finally saw what was real. And I knew things had to change. I remember clasping my hands and saying softly, "You've already done so much for us, but this would change everything." Greg reassured me right away, "You'd still be a co-owner, Mom. Your name will stay on the title, of course." They made it sound like I was an important part of their lives, like I belonged there. I nodded, even though a small voice inside me hesitated. My late husband would have asked more questions. He was always careful about the details, especially with money. But me? I just wanted to trust my son. My only child. My family. That morning, when I pulled into their driveway, everything looked perfect. The flower beds Jenna took such pride in were freshly trimmed. A little blue swing hung from the oak tree in the yard. I could almost hear Robert's voice teasing me. "You're spoiling them, Martha. Let them stand on their own 2 feet." But I pushed that thought away. This is love, I told myself. Inside, Jenna was folding baby clothes on the couch, neat little piles of onesies and socks. The nursery upstairs was fully ready, soft animal toys, pale yellow walls, everything in its place. "We're so lucky to have you, Martha," she said with a sweet smile, glancing down at the clothes. "We couldn't have done this without you." I smiled back. I believed her. Greg came down the stairs holding the baby, grinning wide, like all was right in the world. "You didn't have to do this, Mom," he said with that half-smile that always reminded me of his dad. "But I'm grateful. We all are." I waved it off, trying to be modest. "You're my family. That's what matters." Over breakfast, they talked easily about dream vacations, good schools for the baby, Greg's new business idea. They made the future sound so bright, so certain. And I felt warm inside, proud even, thinking I was helping build something strong for them. I had no reason to doubt a thing. No warning that, just a few hours later, I'd hear my own son call me stupid when he thought I wasn't listening. No hint that what I felt wasn't love at all, it was just a beautiful lie. Now, sitting in that same kitchen, everything around me felt fake. The nursery, the sweet family photos on the wall, Jenna's carefully chosen words, it was all part of an act. Deep down, I think I saw it coming. I just didn't want to admit it. After Robert died, I was lonely. 42 years of marriage don't disappear without leaving an ache behind. The house felt too quiet. The nights too long. I started holding on tight to anything that made me feel needed. Greg and Jenna knew that. When they first asked me to help, they made it sound like a blessing. "Mom, you're part of the family. You always will be," Greg said, sitting across from me at my own dining table. His voice was so soft that night, like he was trying to protect me from something painful. "We want you involved in every step. We can't do this without you." They wrapped their request in all the right words: family, love, security, the future. So I said yes. I signed the papers. When the first loan went through, they cheered me on. "See? We're a team," Greg said with pride. Jenna even baked cookies for me that week and hugged me like I was her own mother. It felt nice. Safe. Like I had a place again. But it didn't stop there. The second time, it was to refinance part of the house for renovations. "You'll love the new nursery, Mom," Jenna had said, showing me pictures of soft forest animals and sunshine yellow paint. "It's your grandson's future room." Then came the third time. Greg had a new business idea. "It's solid, Mom. I promise. The return will help all of us," he said, flipping through shiny brochures, full of plans and numbers. I could hear Robert's voice in my head again: "Slow down, Martha. Don't sign what you don't understand." But I pushed that voice aside. Greg wasn't one of those kids you hear about on the news. He loved me. He was building something good. I didn't want to insult him by questioning it. So I signed. Again and again. And each time, I gave more than just my signature. I gave my trust. My permission. My power. Then came the day they asked me to sign power of attorney documents. "It's just a formality, Mom," Greg said. "You trust me, right? This way, I can handle everything for you, no stress." And I wanted to trust him. I really, truly did. They told me it would be easier this way: less stress, fewer forms, no confusing legal talk. And honestly, at 72, trying to understand all those thick financial documents felt like trying to read another language. Greg promised he'd take care of everything. Jenna kept me feeling loved the whole time: little gifts, weekly dinners, more phone calls, more visits. It felt like my world was anchored again, wrapped safely in family. At least, that's how it seemed. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. Every kind word, every sweet gesture, every warm hug, it was all part of something bigger. They didn't just want my help. They wanted control. Access. They wrapped it all in love so I wouldn't notice what was really happening. Even after I overheard that awful phone call, my son calling me stupid, laughing about how I kept signing things, I still didn't want to believe it. A part of me held on to hope. Maybe they were joking. Maybe I misunderstood. But deep down, something had already changed. The warmth I used to feel around them had turned cold and sharp. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone, heart pounding slow and heavy. My hands hovered over the screen. Jenna had set me up with all these apps, saying it would help me stay on top of things. "Everything's transparent, Martha," she said. That word stuck in my head: transparent. So I finally opened the files they'd linked me to months ago. I hadn't looked before. I trusted them. The first few files were what I expected: mortgage papers, savings records, tax forms. Normal stuff. But then I opened something I didn't recognize. A business account. My name was on it. The balance was huge. And the transaction history? Transfer after transfer, money going into accounts with Greg's name. I kept clicking through folders, another one labeled investment package. My name again. Primary guarantor. Then more accounts, crypto, loans, high-risk stock portfolios. My stomach dropped. I could barely breathe. I had no idea any of this existed, but there it was, in black and white, with my name on all of it. They'd used the access I gave them. The trust. The power of attorney. The joint accounts. Even my clean credit. They'd built an entire financial web, and I was the center of it, completely unaware. If something went wrong, it would be my name dragged through the mud. This wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Disguised as love. I felt the walls of my kitchen closing in. Everything that had once brought me comfort suddenly felt unfamiliar. The chair under me, the photos on the wall, the ticking of the clock, it all felt like part of a play, like I'd been living on a stage without realizing it. I set the tablet down slowly. Every part of me wanted to scream, to call him, to demand answers. But I didn't move. Instead, something colder settled over me. A deep, strange calm. Not weakness, clarity. They had counted on me being soft. On me avoiding conflict. On me trusting too easily because I just wanted to feel close to them. But this? This wasn't something I could ignore. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I walked to the sink and washed my hands, as if I could rinse away the shame. The water was warm, but inside, I still felt cold. You let this happen, Martha, I told myself. You handed them the keys. I dried my hands, folded the towel neatly, and turned to the little study off the kitchen. My husband's old filing cabinet stood there, untouched for years. I opened it slowly, pulling out the paperwork I hadn't looked at since he passed. I needed to see everything now. No more trusting their summaries. No more smiling while signing. If they thought I was too old or too naive to notice what they'd done, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The house was quiet, except for the steady ticking of the old mantel clock. I moved room to room, not panicked anymore, just focused. Sharp. I wasn't going to yell or cry. That would give them power. I wasn't handing them my pain. Not anymore. I set the tea on the table and took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Going through the usual motions helped keep my hands from shaking. My cat, Willow, followed me from room to room like a quiet shadow. Her big green eyes never left me. She knew something was off. Animals always do. I sat down at the desk, opened my laptop, and logged into the online accounts Greg had set up for me. He'd called it convenient. But just thinking of that word made my stomach twist. I started downloading everything I could find, documents, contracts, financial records, anything with my name on it. There were savings plans, business deals, joint ventures I never even agreed to. I made folders on my hard drive and labeled every single file with dates, account numbers, and notes. Then I printed copies too. Not because I didn't trust the digital ones, but because there's something about holding paper in your hands, it's real. You can't delete it. Willow hopped onto the desk and curled up next to the growing stack of papers. She looked like a little gray guard, keeping watch. I gently petted her. Good girl, I whispered. We're just getting started. Once everything was saved and backed up, I pulled out my old leather notebook. I hadn't touched it since Robert died. The cover was worn, but the pages were still blank, waiting. I began to write down everything I knew, everything I thought might be true, and everything I needed to find out. There were accounts tied to Greg. Businesses under both our names. Credit cards I'd never opened but were using my name. So many questions. Were there more hidden assets? How much debt had been stacked against me? How long had this been happening? The list grew fast. I took a sip of tea. No honey this time, I needed the bitterness. I didn't want anything sweet softening the sharp edge of what I was starting to see. Their whole plan was built on one thing, that I wouldn't check. That I would just trust. The old house creaked as I moved through it. Funny how the sounds that once made it feel spooky now brought comfort. I carried my tea into Robert's study. Well, it's mine now, but I still think of it as his. He used to sit here for hours, going over insurance papers and investment statements. I could still hear his voice in my head saying, "Don't sign what you don't understand, Martha. No one looks out for you like you do." He'd said it so many times. I just never thought I'd need to use that advice against our own son. I sat down at the desk and opened a dusty file box labeled Robert, 2005 to 2017. Inside, everything was perfectly organized: bank statements, investment notes, tax records. Page after page, I read through them, his handwriting neat and careful. He had cross-checked every number, balanced every account. He never would have let this mess happen. But after he passed, Greg stepped in almost right away. "You don't need to worry about all this paperwork anymore, Mom," he'd said kindly, holding my hand. "Let me take care of it. It's too much." And at the time, it was too much. The grief had hit hard, and I was tired. I didn't want to sit alone in this room with all those memories, so I let him handle it. That was my first mistake. Flipping Through Robert's files, I found old emails Greg had sent me over the years. They'd seemed harmless then, friendly updates full of reassurance. Everything's on track, Mom. The loan was approved thanks to your co-signature. Just a few forms to make the lender happy. Nothing you need to stress about. He made. It all sounds so simple, like he had everything under control. Jenna helped sell it too. She was always warm, always grateful. Martha, we're so lucky to have you. You've given us so much. We couldn't have done this without you. And back then, it felt good to be needed. That's what they were counting on. Reading it all now, with clear eyes, I saw what I hadn't before. Greg never gave me the full picture. He only told me what he wanted me to hear. It wasn't teamwork, it was a performance. One I didn't know I was a part of. And the power of attorney papers? That was the final piece. Just for emergencies, Mom. You'll still have full control, it just gives me permission in case something happens. Now. I see. Something had happened. I just didn't know it at the time. When I wasn't around, he used my love like it was just another tool. And Jenna? She played her part like it was a script. Always sweet, always smoothing over my doubts, always saying the right thing at the right time. The perfect daughter-in-law. Who just wanted the best for everyone. I swallowed hard. I couldn't even bring myself to be mad at me. When you've spent your whole life believing someone loves you without question, you don't look for lies. You don't imagine betrayal. Not easily. But love without respect? That's not love. Not really. I grabbed a yellow notepad and started writing down everything I could remember, every loan, every refinance, every time I said yes to help them out. I wasn't going to be the helpless widow anymore. If they wanted to play power games, fine. They were about to find out what it looked like when I held the reins. Willow hopped back up on the desk, curling in my lap like she was guarding me. I scratched behind her ear as I looked out the window. The sun was slipping behind the trees. Tomorrow, I whispered, we start making things right. The next morning, I dressed like I always did, slacks, a soft blouse, a light sweater. Nothing fancy. I looked like a woman running errands, and that's exactly what I wanted. Calm had settled into me, deep and steady. There was no more space for fear. That part was over. Before I left the house, I leaned down and patted Willow gently on the head. Hold down the fort, I told her. She blinked at me slowly, like she understood exactly what I meant. The drive downtown was quiet. The streets were familiar ones. I'd driven for years, first with Robert, then by myself. But today wasn't just another bank visit. Today, every step I took had purpose. I parked a little ways away and walked calmly toward the office of my financial advisor, Mr. Cololton. He had known Robert for years. We weren't close, but I trusted him. He was one of those quiet, steady types, polite, professional, and always paid attention. Inside, his receptionist gave me a warm smile. Good morning, Mrs. Adams. Do you have an appointment? No, I said, returning the smile. But I was hoping Mr. Cololton might have a minute. It's a private matter. Let me check, she said, and within moments, I was being shown to his office. He stood as I entered. Martha, of course. Please, sit. The door shut softly behind me. For a moment, I just sat there, collecting my breath. I need to go over my accounts, I said. My voice was steady, my hands folded neatly in my lap. All of them. Every joint account. Every signature. Every authorization connected to my name. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he stayed calm. Is something wrong? I'm not sure yet, I replied. That's why I need your help. He nodded, understanding that something serious was going on. For the next hour, we went through everything, line by line. Slowly, the truth began to show itself. Greg had submitted power of attorney papers. He'd signed off on investment decisions, taken out loans with my name attached, moved money around freely. Mr. Cololton looked troubled. He has access to a lot of your assets, he said gently. Some of these accounts are risky, Martha. I didn't realize how far this had gone. Neither did I said, calm but firm. And I want it stopped. He sat up straighter. His voice changed, more focused now. We can begin the revocation process. You'll need to officially cancel his power of attorney, and freeze the joint accounts so he can't make any more changes. Do it. Are you sure? I looked him straight in the eye. I've never been more sure. He nodded. Then we'll also need a lawyer for the filings, and you'll have to visit the banks in person to secure the freezes. I've already planned for that, I said. We spent the next half hour gathering the necessary forms. I signed the first round of revocation orders. And as I did, I felt something wash over me, not fear. Something stronger. This was power. Before I left, I asked one more question. If his investments go bad, how much could I lose? Legally? Mr. Cololton let out a long breath. Quite a bit. You're listed as the primary guarantor on several credit lines. But if we move quickly, freeze the accounts, document your objections, we can build a legal defense if it comes to that. Then let's act, I said, standing and shaking his hand firmly. As I walked back to my car, the afternoon sun reflected off the glass buildings downtown. Everything looked the same, cars driving by, people chatting on sidewalks, birds in the trees. But I was different now. I wasn't asleep anymore. My world had shifted. And I realized something: being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Not anymore. That evening, as the sky turned dark and the house fell into its usual peaceful silence, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Greg's name lit up the screen. I just stared at it for a second. He never called at night unless he wanted something. I picked it up and kept my voice light. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hey, Mom," he said, cheerful, too cheerful. It was that voice he used when he was trying to charm me, like he used to as a kid when he wanted something big. "Just calling to check in. How are you doing?" "I'm fine," I said. "How's the baby?" "Oh, he's great. Such a handful lately," he laughed, sounding casual, like this was just a sweet little check-in call. But I knew better. I could hear the tension under his words. Like always, he was testing the waters. After a few minutes of empty chit-chat, he got to the point. "Actually, Mom, there's something I wanted to talk to you about." "Here it comes," I thought, smiling to myself. "Of course," I said calmly. "What is it?" He cleared his throat. That nervous little habit he's had since he was a teenager. He only did it when he was lying. "Well, there's this opportunity. It's really promising. Kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing, honestly." "Is that so?" I asked gently. "Tell me more." "You remember that business I mentioned? Well, they're speeding things up. Big investment phase coming up. But I need some liquidity. Just short-term, of course. Temporary. Barely even a favor." I stayed quiet, letting the silence do the work. I just thought, since we're already kind of partnered on paper, it'd be easy to move some money around. Nothing risky. It's all secure. I wouldn't even ask if it wasn't so important, for Jenna, for the baby. There it was. The baby. He always knew how to hit that button. I closed my eyes for a moment and took a slow breath. My voice stayed soft. "I see. And you're sure it's safe?" "Completely. Just to lock in the final piece." A small smile crept onto my lips, not that he could see it. "Well, sweetheart, I'm sure we can talk about it. Why don't we meet in person? I prefer to go over things face to face. Helps me feel more at ease." There was a pause. I could almost hear his brain racing, trying to figure out if something was off. "Sure," he said a little too quickly. "Absolutely. Great idea. Tomorrow work?" "Tomorrow's perfect. Let's meet somewhere public though," I added. "Easier to hear you clearly. You know how noisy the house gets with the baby." He laughed nervously. "Whatever works best for you." As we ended the call, I could hear the relief in his voice. He still thought he had me. Thought I was soft, trusting, gullible. But I wasn't that mom anymore. I placed my phone face down on the counter and let out a long breath. The house felt heavy, but not in a scary way. More like it was holding me steady. He still thinks I'm asleep, I thought. Good. I turned off the kitchen light, leaving only the soft lamp glowing in the living room. The documents were locked away. The account freezes were in progress. Everything was in motion. Tomorrow, I'd let him talk, just like always. I'd let him spin his little web. But this time, I'd be the one holding the scissors. The next morning, I got to the cafe 20 minutes early. It was one of those trendy spots Jenna always called rustic chic. Exposed brick, soft lights, mismatched chairs that were way too intentional to be random. I picked a table in the corner near the window, my back to the wall so I could see the whole room. Control. The waitress brought me tea, and I thanked her with a nod. I watched the door as the minutes ticked by. Greg arrived right on time, which only happened when he needed something. He spotted me quickly and walked over with a wide grin, like this was just a sweet little coffee date between mother and son. "Mom," he said warmly, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "You look great." "Thank you, sweetheart. You're looking sharp yourself." We sat down. He ordered his usual coffee. Then came the warm-up, light jokes, casual conversation, trying to set the stage. He was good at this part. Too good. But my mind was somewhere else. The small recording device was tucked neatly inside my purse, already running. I had the recorder ready before Greg even got there. I'd practiced setting it up earlier, and it was aimed just right. The soft background sounds of the cafe helped hide it, but the recorder would catch everything he said. At first, we made small talk, how the baby was doing, how business was going, the weather. Then his voice changed. He leaned in, folded his hands on the table, and used that sweet, serious tone he always pulled out when he wanted something. "Mom, I really appreciate you meeting me," he said. "You've always supported us. I know you just want what's best for our family." I nodded, letting him keep going. "This opportunity is rock solid," he said. "We've done all the research. It's almost guaranteed to pay off. But I need to act fast." I asked, "How much do you need?" quietly. He looked down like he had practiced the answer. "Not much, just $200,000. It's short term. And it's backed by our assets. Assets that were built in my name." He smiled again, thinking I was on board. "We've already got the paperwork ready. Since we have joint accounts and I have power of attorney, it's pretty easy, just need your signature." I took a slow sip of my tea, keeping my expression calm. "You already prepared the papers?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quickly. "You know how it is easier to have everything ready in case you say yes." I paused for a moment. "And Jenna's okay with this too?" "Of course," he said. "We both are." There it was, the usual trick, pretend they're a team so I don't feel like I can say no to just one of them. I gave a little smile. "You two have really built quite the system." Greg laughed. "Well, you taught me to plan ahead. Like Dad used to say," I cut him off in my head. "Don't you dare bring your father into this." Out loud, I laughed softly, pretending everything was fine while bitterness burned in my chest. He kept talking, profits, timelines, risk management, spinning his little story, not realizing every lie was being recorded. When he finally stopped, I put my hand over his and smiled kindly. "Sweetheart, thank you for thinking of me. Really. But let me look everything over for a day or two. You know me, I like to be thorough too." I saw it, a tiny flicker of surprise on his face. He hadn't expected that. But he quickly smiled again. "Of course, Mom. Take your time." I gently pulled my hand away. "It's a big decision. We want to do it right." He nodded, convinced I was still on the hook. But I wasn't. Not anymore. When we stood up, I hugged him. He had no idea how tightly I held onto my purse, with the recorder still running inside. "Thank you, Greg," I thought as I walked away. "You just gave me exactly what I needed." By the next afternoon, all the doubt I'd been carrying was gone. I wasn't afraid anymore, not of Greg, not of Jenna, not of losing their love. Because now I saw the truth, there wasn't any real love to lose. At my attorney's office downtown, I sat across from Miss Whitaker. She was in her late 50s, sharp and no nonsense, just as my financial advisor had promised. She reminded me a little of myself, quiet, but tough underneath. "Walk me through everything, Mrs. Adams," she said, opening her yellow legal pad. "Don't leave anything out." So I didn't. For almost an hour, I laid it all out, every loan I co-signed, every business idea they pulled me into, the power of attorney forms I now regretted signing, the secret accounts I discovered, and finally, the recorded conversation from the cafe. She listened carefully, her eyebrows tightening with each lie. When I finished, she leaned back, tapping her pen on the desk. "They've left quite the trail," she said. "It's more than enough to take serious action." I asked, calmly, "Will I lose everything?" She shook her head. "Not if we act quickly. You have more power here than you think." Then she laid out the next steps, one by one, making sure I understood. We'd revoke the power of attorney right away and have it notarized. Legal notices would go out to every bank involved. Joint accounts would be frozen and reviewed. She would also file a formal letter stating I was a victim of financial abuse. And just like that, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. "You might face some backlash," Miss Whitaker warned. "Emotional pressure, guilt trips, threats, they may say you're tearing the family apart. Be ready for that." I looked her in the eyes and nodded. "I've been getting ready for that my whole life, without even realizing it." She gave a small smile, and I saw a flicker of respect behind her glasses. "Good," she said. "Then let's begin." By the time I got home, she had already filed the first round of legal notices online and promised to follow up with every contact herself. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened the small fireproof safe where I kept all the important stuff, Robert's will, my pension papers, insurance, and now, my updated estate plans. I pulled out my old will. Greg's name was written on every line, over and over again. He was set to get everything. My chest tightened as I looked at it. I'd thought I was protecting him by leaving him everything, trying to make things easier for him someday. But in reality, all I'd done was hand him control of my life, before I was even gone. Not anymore. I picked up a black pen and, with a steady hand, crossed out his name. Slowly. Deliberately. When I finished, I slid the old will back into the safe, but not before writing "superseded," for record only, across the front. The official version would be signed next week, but this moment right here? It was the one that really mattered. I had taken my life back. My house, my name, my choices, everything I had built was mine again. And one day, when I was no longer here, it would go to someone who truly understood what it meant to love without trying to take. Because love without respect? That's not love. That's stealing. I looked out the front window. The porch light glowed in the early evening. I used to leave it on, hoping Greg might stop by. Now, it was just a light, steady, simple, no longer tied to hope. Just there. The next morning, I was already up before the sun rose. I've always been an early riser, Robert used to joke that. I was part bird, part robot, always up before the robins. But today wasn't about habit. Today was about action. I called the mortgage office first. A kind woman named Sandra answered. I kept my voice warm and polite, just a sweet older lady checking her files. Sandra confirmed that the mortgage had been paid off just last month, and yes, the title showed both Greg and me as owners. Wonderful, I said, smiling into the phone. And just to be clear, no changes can happen, like selling or refinancing, without my signature, right? That's correct, she said. Perfect, I replied sweetly. I'd like to quietly explore options for selling or moving the loan, for estate planning reasons. Sandra paused but kept it professional. We can help with that. I'll mark your file and connect you with a senior manager. I hung up and let out a slow breath. One more piece in place. Greg and Jenna thought paying off the mortgage gave them full control. But legally, that house still belonged to me. Completely. They hadn't counted on me digging back into that. Now I was taking steps they'd never see coming. Later that day, I went to the bank in person. No emails. No phone calls. I wanted this done quietly. Less chance they'd catch wind of it. I met with a young branch manager named Jeremy, who, thankfully, treated me with patience and respect. I slid my ID across the desk. I'd like to close the joint credit lines, I said. Freeze them immediately. No more charges. And please, don't notify the other users until everything is finalized. Jeremy raised an eyebrow but nodded. That's your right as the primary account holder. Are you expecting any trouble, Mrs. Adams? I gave a calm smile. Maybe. That's why I want this locked down before anyone else catches on. He lowered his voice. We'll take care of it. Piece by piece, the puzzle was shifting. Quietly but surely, I was building a wall of protection around my life. By the time I got home that evening, everything was already in motion, the mortgage was being reviewed for sale, the credit lines were frozen, and I was finally, steering the ship again. With the legal paperwork moving through Miss Whitaker's office and my new estate documents scheduled to be signed soon, things were quietly falling into place. Greg and Jenna still floated along, totally unaware, thinking everything was fine, like they were standing on solid ice. But the cracks had already spread underneath them. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my second cup of tea, my notebook open in front of me. I added to my checklist with a small, satisfied smile, heavy checkmark mortgage flagged for transfer, heavy checkmark joint credit lines frozen, heavy checkmark power of attorney revoked, heavy checkmark estate restructuring in progress. This wasn't about getting revenge. It was about taking back control. For the first time in a long while, I felt like the person steering my own life again. Willow, my cat, jumped onto the table and curled up next to my notebook, her soft gray fur rising and falling with each calm breath. Her peaceful presence matched mine. This house didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like home again, my home. Let them enjoy their last few weeks of pretending everything was fine, I thought. They won't even see the storm coming until it's already hit. I reached over and gently scratched behind Willow's ear. Almost done, sweetheart. I whispered. Almost done. 2 weeks later, the first crack finally reached them. It was a Thursday night. I didn't need to be there, I had already pictured it perfectly in my mind. Greg and Jenna were probably out celebrating some new business win, a new investor. A new deal, whatever lie he was telling now. They ordered wine, maybe laughed over dinner, and Jenna probably looked across the table thinking everything was going their way. Then the waiter brought the check. The first card didn't go through. Greg probably chuckled and told him to try again, probably blamed the bank. But then the second card declined too. Panic doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it shows up in tight jaws and tense glances between people who suddenly realize something is very, very wrong. That same night, a thick envelope showed up in Greg's mailbox. Inside? A formal notice from the mortgage company. The servicing had been transferred. Ownership conditions had changed. A financial review was now required. In plain terms, your safety net is gone. The house, the one they thought was untouchable thanks to my gift, was now at risk. Not because of bad luck. Not because of some mistake. Because I pulled the one lever they never thought I'd dare touch. The next morning, my phone rang. Greg's name lit up the screen. I let it ring. I didn't want to hear his panicked voice or his carefully planned excuses. I didn't want to hear Jenna in the background, scrambling to stay calm. I didn't know them that anymore. Instead, I sat at the same kitchen table, tea in hand, with all my documents neatly stacked in front of me. Ms. Whitaker called. Her voice was calm but firm. Everything is done, Mrs. Adams. The new deed has been filed. All the revocation notices are complete. Joint credit lines have been closed. Thank you, Laura, I said. You're in a strong position, she continued. If they try anything legally, they don't have a case. You've left a clear trail of financial abuse and manipulation. If they fight this, the burden falls entirely on them. I smiled. Let them try. The old me would have been scared of arguments, of upsetting the family, of being called the problem. But that version of me is gone. I finally understood something I wish I'd learned long ago. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect. And Greg and Jenna never respected me. They respected what I could give. My money. My silence. My signature. And now, I had taken all of that back. The house was quiet that night, but for the first time, I didn't feel lonely. I stood by the front window, looking out at the trees gently swaying in the breeze. The same trees Greg used to climb when he was little. The ones Robert and I planted when we first moved here, all those years ago. This was my home. My memories. My choices. And nothing they did could ever take that from me again. Her tail brushed against my leg as she walked past, flicking upward like a tiny flag. I bent down and picked her up, holding her close to my chest. We stood by the window together, looking out at the quiet street. Everything out there looked peaceful, like nothing had changed. But inside my home, everything was different now. And they still didn't know just how much. They would soon. Then came the knock, loud and sharp. 3 quick bangs that made the doorknob rattle like someone was trying to knock the kindness right out of my front door. I had been waiting for it. Calmly, I walked over, checked that the little voice recorder hidden behind the vase was running, and opened the door. Greg stood there, jaw clenched tight, eyes wide with anger. He looked like a man used to getting his way. Behind him was Jenna, standing stiffly on the porch, arms crossed and lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She was only there to back him up. Mom, Greg said. His voice sounded shaky. We need to talk. Of course, sweetheart, I said gently, stepping aside. Come in. They walked into the living room and stopped. Sitting there, calm and steady, was Miss Whitaker, my attorney. Her briefcase sat beside her like a brick holding the room in place. Greg's face twisted. Who is this? This is my attorney, I said, keeping my voice even. Laura Whitaker. She's helping me make some changes to my estate. Things that should have been done a long time ago. Greg gave a short, nervous laugh. Estate changes? Mom, what the hell is going on? Jenna stood near the fireplace, watching closely, trying to figure out how bad this really was. I sat down and gestured for Greg to sit too. He didn't. His voice rose, shaking with anger. You froze our accounts. You pulled the mortgage. The credit lines are gone. Do you even understand what you've done? I understand perfectly, I said, still calm. I'm protecting what's mine. You're tearing everything apart, he shouted. The veins in his neck bulged. I built everything with you. We're a team. No, Greg, I said quietly, shaking my head. You built it on me. You never asked. You never respected me. That's not a team. That's stealing. He scoffed and started pacing. You're overreacting. We've talked about all this. No, I said, cutting him off. You talked. You explained. You twisted the truth until I didn't know which way was up. And I let it happen because I trusted you. But you used that trust like a weapon. Jenna finally spoke, her voice thin and cold. We were trying to build a future, for your grandson, for the family. Isn't that what you always wanted? For years, I thought it was, I said, looking right at her. But now I see. You never saw me as family. You saw me as a bank account with a heartbeat. Greg slammed his hands on the back of the chair but still didn't sit. You're ruining everything, Mom. You're tearing this family apart. I sat up straighter, met his eyes, and said clearly, no, Greg. You ruined it the moment you stopped seeing me as a person. Miss Whitaker quietly opened her briefcase and slid a folder across the table to him. These papers show every transaction you made in your mother's name, without permission, she said calmly. They've been submitted to the proper authorities. Greg's fake smile faded fast. Authorities, he asked. State fraud investigators. Elder abuse unit. Identity misuse, she said without blinking. This isn't just a family argument anymore. Jenna's face went pale. She reached for Greg's arm, but he yanked it away. You're destroying your own son, he said, his voice cracking. For what? Out of spite? I stood slowly, letting the silence speak before I did. Then I answered, no, Greg. For dignity. For once, he had nothing to say. Jenna whispered, we need to leave. She tugged his sleeve, and they turned and walked out without another word. The door slammed behind them. I let out a breath I didn't even know I'd been holding. Miss Whittaker looked at me with a calm smile. You did well. I nodded. I feel clean, I whispered. Not like I won. Just clean. I stayed seated for a while. The room was quiet. My hands were steady in my lap. My breathing was calm. Then Miss Whittaker opened her briefcase again and pulled out another stack of papers, this one even thicker. There's something else they don't know yet, she said, sliding it toward me. I nodded slowly. I already knew. It was finally done. All of it's already been filed, Miss Whittaker said, calm as ever. Timestamped, submitted to state and federal agencies first thing this morning. Every document. Every recording. Every email you sent, it's all there. They've already started reviewing everything. I rested my fingertips lightly on the folder in front of me. I didn't even need to open it. The weight of it meant something bigger than just paperwork. It was proof. Evidence. Truth they couldn't twist. They thought today was their moment, I said quietly. That they could walk in here, take control, make me feel bad enough to undo everything. They thought I'd back down. Miss Whittaker gave the smallest smile. They didn't think you'd be 2 steps ahead. Greg still believed he had a chance. That if he yelled loud enough, pushed hard enough, used enough guilt, I'd crumble. Like I used to. But this time? The game was already over before he stepped in the room. We had the audio from that cafe meeting. A full digital record of every account he touched without my permission. Copies of contracts I never actually agreed to. Voicemails. Threats. All of it backed up, sorted, and out of my hands now. They can't reach it, can they? I asked. No, she said firmly. It's protected. Even if they try to contact you again, and they will, you're fully insulated. I let those words sink in. For so long, they thought I was too soft to ever fight back. That I'd keep forgiving just because I loved them. And honestly? They weren't wrong. I was patient. I did love them. I stayed quiet. But they mistook my silence for weakness. What they never understood is that quiet women build strong walls, while others waste energy shouting at closed doors. My phone buzzed again. Greg's name lit up the screen. I didn't pick it up. I already knew the routine, first charm, then guilt, then anger, and finally begging. I'd seen it play out too many times. But not anymore. This time, he could talk. To himself. Miss Whittaker stood and picked up her briefcase. We'll move forward with the property transfer next week, once the investigation officially confirms your reports. After that, your estate will be protected under a no-contest clause. I gave a small nod. Good. I want it written clearly. No confusion. She paused, watching me. Most people wait until after they're gone to protect their legacy. You're doing it while you're still standing. I smiled. That's because I've been standing all this time. I just did it quietly. She gave me a respectful nod and walked out, leaving me alone in the stillness. I stood and walked to the fireplace. The family photo was still sitting there, smiles carefully arranged to look like everything was perfect. I didn't feel angry. Just clear. I picked it up, opened the drawer in Robert's old desk, gently laid it inside, and closed it. No rage. Just peace. Outside, the wind tapped the porch swing gently against its chains. Willow, my cat, jumped onto the windowsill and curled her tail. She looked out, calm and steady, just like me. They still didn't know what they'd really lost. But they would. And I wouldn't need to raise my voice to make them see. The first call from law enforcement came just 2 days later. Not to me, to Greg. I only knew because Jenna left me a voicemail that afternoon. Her voice was tight, panicked, trying to sound composed, but failing. Martha, please call us. The state investigator called Greg. They're saying things we don't even understand, fraud, financial abuse. This is going too far. Please, you have to fix this. We can work it out, as a family. Work it out. That was the moment the mask cracked. The perfect image they'd worked so hard to maintain was breaking faster than they could patch it. I played the voicemail once. Then calmly saved it in the same secure folder where every other piece of truth lived. Labeled it, Justification. Audio 23. By that evening, the fallout had already started. Greg's business partners pulled out the moment the investigation became public. His accounts were frozen. Jenna's name came up in the audit trail. That triggered a second wave of investigations, this time into the paperwork she'd signed. Jenna broke first. And honestly? I wasn't surprised. Jenna had always been good at stirring things up, she was built for drama. She knew how to twist A story, how to manipulate people into seeing what she wanted them to see. But only as long as no one looked too closely. The moment things went public and people started asking questions, she couldn't keep it together. It didn't take long for her to start falling apart. People began talking, friends, neighbors, even distant relatives. A cousin came forward, remembering a time Greg had bragged, laughing, "Mom signs off on everything. She's basically my silent investor." They didn't just break the rules, they documented it, like they thought they'd never get caught. That night, I sat by the fireplace with a warm cup of tea in my hands. The room felt calm. Safe. My phone buzzed again, this time, it was a text from Greg. "Please. I messed up. Don't let this ruin everything. I never meant for it to go this far. Please, Mom. Call me." I read it twice, slowly. The tone was completely different now. The same son who once joked about me behind my back was suddenly standing in the wreckage of what he'd built, begging me not to walk away. But I didn't reply. Some messages don't deserve a response. Silence is enough. Across the room, Willow, my cat, hopped gently onto the armrest beside me. I reached out and stroked her back, her fur soft and steady beneath my hand. "I told you they'd push back," I whispered to her. "Now they're finally learning that choices have consequences." The house felt warm that night. Not empty like it used to in the early days after Robert passed. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't some grand victory. It just felt right. Like things were finally being put back in their place. The next morning, Miss Whitaker called. Her voice was steady, efficient, just like always. "The state investigator has accepted all of your filings," she said. "They're recommending charges, fraudulent asset manipulation and elder financial abuse. As of 8:42 a.m. today, your estate is officially locked into the new trust." I closed my eyes for a second, letting her words settle in. "Good," I said softly. "No future challenges will be valid," she added. "And if they ever try to come at you emotionally, or try to use guardianship laws, you're already covered. They've been disqualified permanently. No loopholes. Let them scream into the wind if they want," I said. "The paperwork will speak for me." That same afternoon, Jenna's relatives put out a statement through their lawyer. They made it very clear, they didn't support what Greg had done. Called his behavior shocking. Disappointing. Like they had no idea. Of course they did. People like that always run for cover the second things get real. It's all about saving face. But I didn't feel bitter anymore. I didn't feel angry. What I felt was something quieter, and much stronger. It was peace. Not because I had hurt anyone back. Not because I'd won. But because I had finally built something stronger than what they tried to take from me. For the first time since Robert died, I had boundaries. And no one was ever going to cross them again.